All right, welcome back to the Splatt Show, episode 2 this week. Thank you again for tuning in and watching. We received some lovely feedback last week via email, YouTube comments, phone calls, you name it. So we really appreciate your support. A little snail mail. And we're trying to make it as best we can for you. So a couple improvements we made. If you are watching this on YouTube right now, in the video version, you'll notice that we now have a webcam, so you can see us gabbing it up with each other. We have a fancy new studio microphone to hopefully make the P's pop a little less. And we also have some footage going on. So while that footage is there, it's meant to just kind of be a visual reference, but not something like directly contextual to what we're talking about at that moment. So if you're like me and you like to listen to your podcast in the car, you're not going to be missing out if you don't watch the video. So that being said, thanks again for all that support. We are actually now published on both iTunes and Google Play. So if you search their podcast section, we should come up, and still going to be posted on YouTube as well. So exciting news too. Last week we decided to add a stream component to the show. So in our first episode, Sam brought up this old game from his childhood, board game Top Shop.
Yep.
And we decided we were going to try and track it down. And so, sure enough, you found it in your parents' house, dug it out, we brought it over and plugged it in, and now we were able to play it. So basically, each Wednesday we'll do a podcast, and then the next Wednesday we'll do a stream, and it'll alternate like that. So twitch.tv/Purple Platypus is the link for the stream. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how that stream went and the game that we were playing, Board Game Top Shop.
Okay, so Board Game Top Shop is for the original PlayStation. It's like this just oddball, I'm pretty sure it's Japanese, like Monopoly-style board game. It has board game in the title, which is really funny. So it's kind of like Monopoly.
Kind of like Mario Party.
Kind of like Mario Party. It's like we have players, they're moving through squares. The squares happen to be like storefronts in a mall. So the whole game takes place in a mall, and we just have players racing through a mall, opening stores, buying things from each other, selling things to each other based on where they landed, and trying to reach some kind of like goal number of like, we want this many assets, and whoever reaches that amount of money and assets wins.
Whoever wins, reaches that amount of money, which takes, gosh, I would guess it would probably have taken us maybe 4 more hours to actually have a clear winner emerge. Kind of one of my issues as we played the game was you start in a completely empty mall, so no player has colonized any stores. Kind of like Monopoly, where no one owns any of the spaces, but there's just no other accompanying gameplay. There's no Mario Party has the mini games to split it up, whereas this is just, all right, you're just going to go and you're going to buy shops because you have money.
Yeah, let's go around and start getting shops, and you're not really making interesting choices yet. You're kind of like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to open a shop here, of course I'm going to open a shop there. And we found that after like an hour into the game, we were kind of like, how long is this game? But like an hour in, like the choices started getting interesting in terms of like, opening stores or like taking over an opponent's store, or like how you should stock your store. Choices like that started to be kind of interesting after like an hour of gameplay. And after that point, we played the game for an additional like hour and a half. And by then, we were still within one like game session that it was running 2.5 hours. And we were kind of like, this is really long for a board game,
So I was definitely starting to fizzle out. I eventually threw in my towel, and Sam played, I think, for a little bit longer, just controlling my character. But yeah,
so I was getting into it a little bit because it started to be fun after a long ass time.
It does have like some economy management, like kind of, what's the word, like supply and demand is, I think, like the biggest thing that's evolving in there. Is that, like, you have to stock your shops.
And it's funny that it's very much a numbers game. Like it's completely just a numbers game, but it is like it's in this like super childish, like cute kawaii, like Japanese art style. That, I mean, like, that's awesome. That actually appeals to me because I'm kind of a weirdo. But like, this game was definitely like targeted at kids, but yet it's like pretty dense in terms of like the choices that you start making.
So mixed feelings there. I thought as it evolved into this like really complex economy simulation thing, I was pretty over it, and I wasn't in love with the first hour of establishing things. But Sam is pretty much begging me for a rematch with a little different rules, so we might run it back one day. But for this one, I forfeit, so he takes the win here. So that was Board Game Top Shop, and then this week we decided to take a deep dive into Guacamelee, a game made by Drinkbox Studios.
Right. But first we were like, oh, let's take a dive into Kane and Lynch, Deadman.
So we were trying to get into the co-op vein for this podcast, and so we were looking through my Steam library. We were going to go on a big night bender and just kind of crank out one of the games and really just soak it all up. So I have Kane and Lynch in my Steam library from one of those Humble Bundle thingamajigs, and we say, yeah, sure, let's boot it up. So we fire it up, we jump through some hoops, and we finally get it working. And yeah, gosh, we played for what?
We played
10 minutes.
We played for like maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just like, let's do Guacamelee instead.
Yeah. So.
So maybe we shouldn't even talk about this game, but basically we just kind of went into it and we were like, oh, this is like a shooter, right? But like the controls feel really clunky and like it kind of like left a really bad first impression.
Yeah. So, but kind of a happy accident, I guess, because we did stumble our way into Guacamelee, which was in my library as kind of a backup, and at least I was really impressed.
Guacamelee is super tight.
Yeah, tight is a good word too. I think in a lot of ways, tight is cool, but also like very tight feeling game, gameplay wise, controls wise, all that stuff. So before we like talk about the specific co-op aspects, let's just hear general thoughts.
Okay, so immediately when we started playing, I was kind of like, oh my god, I love the art style. It's like super Mexican culture influenced, but also just very like stylized and just very well done. Kind of reminded me of like speedrunners or something.
I feel like it's like an art style that's trying to use the new technology we have in 2D. Like I feel like a lot of games that are 2D nowadays just feel like, well, the only way to do it is to make it pixel art or retro. But we have really great visual rendering software, and we can support much higher resolutions, and this game
beautiful.
Just goes to show
so beautiful
how far that can go.
And then like just based on moving on from that, like just based on the like name of the game and everything, I was kind of expecting like a beat 'em up. But what we like ended up, because I didn't really do my research on this game or whatever, but what we ended up with was like a really like kind of Metroidvania style game that is just really, really well done and polished, and offers like really, really tight and interesting combat, and
the combat was definitely a hit for me as well. Even the platforming elements, that was kind of the cool thing, is you kind of unlock all of these skills like you would in a Metroid style game that let you access new areas. But not only do they let you, like basically each skill lets you break some new color of block, but they also give you some new form of mobility. So
so the skills are not only used kind of in the classic way of like, oh, you have this skill, so now if you go back to that area, now you can break this block and you can go into like this new area, but also like the game actually does feel like a beat 'em up a lot of the time, because like you might go into an area, have it get closed off, and then you fight waves of enemies, and you can use all those skills that are not only used for navigating the world but also just used for combat.
Yeah, and to have both feel good in combat and in the platforming sense, is really a great feat. Also does some good stuff with the humor in the game. It's very self-aware. Throws references to all sorts of games, all sorts of memes. There's like a pretty obvious Metroid reference in there. Definitely.
There's just tons of stuff everywhere.
Gosh. Meme like billboards, but like taken a little differently so that they're not direct references or whatever. But super, very, and not like good self-aware humor. Kind of like a Seinfeld vibe, in that it's just like it knows what it's doing, but it's still funny.
Yeah.
And then part of this game too is that like you can see you can play it single player, but you can also play it co-op. So we took that task on and wanted to see how it played. And this was something I kind of was mixed about, was the second player can't join, can't like start playing until one player has played basically the first maybe 5 minutes of the story mode, which again I think is neat in a story sense, and it makes sense in the scope of this game, but is a dangerous thing, because when you and I started playing, I was trying to connect as the second player.
Right, we just didn't know how, or like we didn't know why it wasn't working and stuff.
Yeah, so even just I feel like a disclaimer at the beginning saying like the second player will be prompted to join soon.
Right, yeah, that could be good.
Would have helped, because it could be very easy that a lot of players, we could have sat down together planning to play it, like been like, oh, we don't know how to do co-op, and just given up.
And then we would be like, oh, let's go play Kane and Lynch, I guess.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then, we'd just be like miserable.
Cry all night. So, but other than that, gosh, co-op wise, it does a lot of things really well. I think balance wise, I always felt like combat was very suited for two people.
Yeah.
I like it has kind of this rescue system, like you would see in Super Mario 3D World Land, whatever the Wii U one is called, where people, when you're playing with multiple people, if someone falls off the stage or dies, they turn into a bubble, and you can kind of pop them and bring them back in. So, kind of lets you piggyback off each other, or kind of like in Halo, when you're playing the campaign, you can like get to a safe spot. Which I think, you could call it an imbalance, but it's just fun when it's going on.
Yeah, no, it's super great. I think it was super well executed. And I think, like, but I want to say that co-op definitely shines more in this game, because this game is a lot of, like we said, there's these sections where it's a lot of fighting, and the fighting is super fun and polished. And then there's also the sections where you kind of use your skills more to, like, navigate the world and to do, like puzzles and challenges that kind of have you using all those skills that you've learned in different ways. And I think, like, co-op shines a lot more in the combat areas versus the, like, platforming puzzle areas. Just because, like, yeah, I mean, combat is just, like, a fun frenzy of everybody running around, and, like, maybe you're, like, tossing opponents toward your friend, and it just, like, very free form and very, like, kind of freestyle, like, do whatever moves you want and just kind of riff off each other and stuff, which is awesome. Whereas the, like, platforming challenges are usually like, oh, you need to do these very specific, like, actions to, like, navigate these obstacles, and it's just, like, distracting as heck when you have two people trying to do it.
Yeah, it's got kind of the similar camera problem that Little Big Planet faces, where, like, it'll kind of default to one person, and, like, maybe that person's lagging behind, and the other person's almost completed this, like, really tough platforming section, but the camera pulls off of them, and
and then they, like,
teleport back or something. And that's really is a tough problem to fix. I think for us, I know we had a lot of laughs trying to simultaneously do platforming.
It was actually hilarious.
But there was definitely times where it just went too far, and it was like, okay, I'm just gonna stand here and you go do it.
It's like I'll put myself in a bubble, and then you do it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah, totally.
Which again, is kind of an understandable trope, because this game is designed to also have single player, so you can't let any one platforming segment require both players to any extent.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's kind of it's almost like a pseudo competition within the game, of us trying to see who can pull it off first, and then eventually being like, all right, the camera flying around is helping no one, so, like, let's take turns or something. Whereas I would say, like, a game that maybe does that better is Battle Block Theater.
Right.
But I think, like, Battle Block Theater's constraints are better suited for co-op.
I haven't played that in a while, but, like, remind me, are all the puzzles in Battle Block Theater, like, doable alone?
If I'm correct, I believe they might be slightly modified for co-op.
Okay, because the way I'm remembering it is I'm remembering so many moments that, like, you had to work together. But
yeah, I think they actually do separate.
So this is not like that.
Yeah, but also in that same vein, the kind of how it handles the camera is just the farther away you two get from each other in Battle Block, the farther it zooms out.
Right.
Which is something it can afford to do.
Right, because the levels in there are like so much more contained than this. Like like Guacamelee takes place in like one enormous like world.
Yeah, Metroidvania style. So, but all in all, I think it handles it well. You know, another co-op game I'm a big fan of, at least the first one, is Army of Two.
Right.
I think, you know, that is kind of in a similar, more on the rails space than Guacamelee is, where you know, you kind of have objectives and you're moving through these burned down buildings, but there's really only one way to go. And, you know, you can still have the issue of your friend lagging behind or something, and it'll, you know, maybe stop you, or you need both people to advance as kind of like natural checkpoints where they have to catch up. But I think, you know, this game really does hold, you know, what I'm looking for most in co-op is I really like this sense of flow that happens when you start playing a game and you're figuring it out, but then, like, you know, usually like each player's play style starts to emerge. Like, I know this happened with me when I did Halo co-op and things like that. Yeah. And when you start to like act without communicating ahead of time, like in Guacamelee, for example, like we started getting like some really great like subconscious follow-ups where like you would throw an enemy to me and I would slam them down, and then you would follow that up again, and we wouldn't even be talking. And even some of the platforming moments, you know, we would help each other out at the last moment.
I think we reached those moments more frequently in like combat versus platforming, but we definitely did in platforming too.
Yeah.
There's a mechanic where you like change what dimension you're in, so you kind of have like different versions of every area in the game.
Which basically just allows like certain level geometry to appear in one dimension and not the other.
Yeah, so we like definitely had moments where we just like unspokenly were like
would flick the dimension at the last second and like save the other one.
Yeah. That probably doesn't make sense, but like honestly, you should just play this game because it's really good.
It is.
And then you'll get it.
It is a very solid one, yeah. And that co-op flow is something that you know, not all games do right, I think. I mean, we didn't. I don't feel that we got far enough in Kane and Lynch last night to really say
to like smack talk it that much.
Yeah. But I've played Army of Two 40th Day a little bit, and I would say that kind of didn't execute as well on the co-op premise as the first one did. I think like there were a lot of like real gimmies in Army of Two. Like there was like simultaneous sniping segments
where it like makes you do it. It's like, all right, now you guys are gonna both snipe,
and you count down, but it's still cool. And then like there's sometimes where it's optional. You can choose to do that, and then, you know, that's your decision. And you know, the fist bump button is just like a great point of comedy in the game. You can play rock paper scissors, and like it really lets you like mold onto the characters and things, and you know, you kind of start to identify with the character that you are playing. Which, okay, to jump back now. Talking Guacamelee, that is one thing I would say was a little I didn't see as much in Guacamelee was playing these. I was playing the second co-op character, so there's Juan.
Juan's like the main character of the story. He's like a luchador who like makes tequila or something.
Yeah, and then he's
trying to rescue his love interest.
And then there's Blue Lady with pink mask.
Yeah, who like we don't even know her name. Does it even ever say her name? I don't know.
No, and she just kind of says like, "Oh, you got the mask. Like, I'll follow you." And doesn't ever have any dialogue. No one ever mentions that she's there. So again, this would be an extra set of steps for Guacamelee to have to make in order to kind of solidify this co-op experience. Right. But as a result, you know, I never felt like I felt I was identifying. I would identify with Juan. I would never identify with like. I mean,
I guess from that like aesthetic perspective, like the co-op feels like a little bit of an afterthought. But like, it really. Like, actually playing the game, it doesn't really feel like an afterthought.
That's true. Yeah, definitely. How about, I don't know. So, 40th Day, I haven't beaten, but I definitely, like, had my reservations about it. Are there any co-op games that come to mind for you that, you know, maybe missed the mark a little or could have done something better?
Not immediately.
Okay. Yeah, I think...
I'll think about that.
I think Halo is the other, like, classic one that we talked about a little bit in here.
Right.
But overall, yeah, there's a lot of elements to co-op, and to really nail the flow, you have to be designing for a co-op perspective, or doing something like Battle Block where there's an experience tailored to a single player, and then tweaking that to tailor enough towards co-op. Right. They definitely, it seems like they tweaked the combat to still be difficult in Guacamelee, but I don't know, I feel like they would have to mix up the platforming, write in a second character that gets optional dialogue, but the overhead on that is that a worthwhile attempt. I think you really have to start with a fixation on co-op.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So any other finishing thoughts on Guacamelee?
I don't know. I just generally think this game's awesome. It's just a sweet Metroidvania game with a really polished combat system that you can play the whole thing co-op with your friends. So
yeah, and not to deter you from the co-op experience,
awesome.
I definitely still had plenty of fun whether or not I identified with my character.
Not to mention the amazing art style and the Mexican theme that you don't even see that often in games and stuff. Super great.
Yeah. So if you got a chance, check it out. And we are big co-op fans. So if you have something out on your mind that you think is a strong example or even a bad example that we should take a look at, just go ahead and send us an email over at thesplatshow@gmail.com. And we'll probably bring it up in the next podcast, or we'll take a look at it on the stream. So we're always listening, and we love playing games. So you know how it is.
Whoa.
Yeah. The other thing, transitions, things to talk about, would be something I saw pop up on Gama Sutra the other day, one of the big gaming news websites. So Blizzard has actually decided to walk away from Battle.net as the name for their kind of online service that holds all of their games. What do you think about that?
I thought that, you were the one who was telling me about this, so if it sounded like their statement was kind of oh, Battle.net used to be this thing where, we have a game and it's a single player game at its core, but then we have these multiplayer features, so then we established that all that stuff lives in Battle.net, and that by today's standards that seems like a very archaic way to do it, and people kind of just when you buy a game you're kind of just oh, does this game have multiplayer? It's not a separate thing. So I think it actually makes a lot of sense to no longer have to make that distinction.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think I would agree. It's a strong play. So in their words, they say we're going to be transitioning away from using the Battle.net name for our gaming service and the functionality connected to it. Battle.net technology will continue to serve as the central nervous system for Blizzard names. Nothing has changed in that regards. We'll just be referring to it much like we refer to Blizzard streaming and Blizzard voice. More changes on the way. So I think they're being transparent about it, which I can really appreciate, and they're kind of giving forewarning. It's still named as Battle.net right now.
Yeah.
But if you're playing a Blizzard name, why does it need to be disguised under a different launcher name?
Yeah, that does seem like a very 1990s thing. So I don't know, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and but the other thing is there's not a really there's not a lot of other appropriate systems. I guess you could say Ubisoft and Steam, but they're in a different league because Blizzard's client only hosts Blizzard games.
Yeah.
So they're kind of there's not really a rule book for that or anything. So making Battle.net back when StarCraft and Warcraft were coming out probably just made sense, and arguably was more informative. Whereas nowadays it's actually interesting. It's flipped, where it's less informative, where people are like, what is Battle.net? I just want to play World of Warcraft or something.
Right, yeah, totally.
And then you kind of eventually, once you own a couple Blizzard games, make the connection that, this guy I made friends with on World of Warcraft, I can also invite to play Hearthstone or something.
Right.
Whereas now, Blizzard has established enough of a network that they can kind of get away with that, which is really cool. I think there's, obviously some other examples of these renames going on. to maybe more or less success and maybe in a little bit of a different vein. For example, Battlefield 1 is coming out, right? And that is definitely a big trend these days, is just kind of making like the 7th or 8th game in your series and deciding to call it 1.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do you think? And again, I guess there's the tie of World War I in there, so there's a little bit more of a founding there. They're not trying to necessarily imply a complete reboot, but do you think that maybe there's like something negative to a lot of, like, if it were just called like Battlefield 8 or something, or I guess this would be 6, or 5?
Yeah, I kind of like usually just roll my eyes at stuff like that because, like, I mean, I guess from a very like practical perspective, it might confuse people if they're talking about like Battlefield 1, like the first Battlefield, you know, but now they're also talking about like the very newest Battlefield. So I think stuff like that, like the Blizzard thing, makes a lot of sense to me. It like
there's
has
not
a
something to
purpose.
confuse it with.
Yeah, it has like a purpose. Like it's not even. I don't know. It's not so much a rebranding. I mean, maybe it is, but it's also just like a way to confuse people less, I guess. Like we talked about.
Whereas those are walking in the other direction.
Yeah, it's like Battlefield 1 feels like just a rebranding and like kind of just a weird choice. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I wonder.
Or like the same thing with the Xbox One, right?
I would be interested to hear like if there's been any polls or studies on like people being intimidated by like Final Fantasy 13 and things like that. You know?
Yeah,
where
I don't know.
The other problem is like
I don't really see the issue with that.
Would you feel like, oh, like, I think a lot of people believe that all Final Fantasy games kind of exist within the same universe and story.
Yeah.
And so you feel like,
totally
oh, well, if I want to play Final Fantasy 13, I would have to play through 12 other games ahead of time.
Right. I didn't even think of that. Maybe that is a factor.
And, you know, Call of Duty has kind of evaded this issue altogether by just calling things warfare.
Yeah, I feel like
rearranging some words.
That also bothers me. Just the like, because you can either simplify things, and there's pros and cons to that, or you can just keep making like subtitles that like all kind of sound the same,
which
that are like slightly different, which is like
starts to get lost.
Yeah.
And then when you do add numbers like Modern Warfare 2, they were like, oh, we don't have a new name for this one, so like just tack a 2 on this time, and then we'll change it up the next one. You know, is a point of confusion. So I think, those are like Blizzard's is kind of an example of a win-win, where from a marketing perspective it makes more sense, and from a usability perspective it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say things like Battlefield 1 and Xbox One, which I still struggle with, because how do you refer to the original Xbox? You know, that's a seriously...
I mean, yeah, if you say the Xbox, then maybe people think you're talking broadly about, like, or they're not sure, like, it could be one of many Xboxes.
Well, if someone says Xbox to me, I'm going to assume the latest one.
Yeah.
And then if they say 360, I'll assume that. But, you know, if they say Xbox One, I'm probably going to still assume the latest one. There's there's no long... I mean... Is there a need to be able to reference the old one?
Just be like...
Not so much from the Microsoft perspective, the business side. They want you talking about the new one?
I don't know. Maybe. Like, I guess they don't really care. Because they don't want
Jedi
people
mind tricks.
They don't want people to talk about the first Xbox. Or, like, they don't... Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Definitely.
It no longer makes them money, so...
Alrighty. So let's go ahead and jump into our next segment here. We did this one last time. This is how we got to Board Game Top Shop.
Right.
Games by association. So how this works is we will go ahead and go to randomwordgenerator.com, and we will generate a word. And whatever that word is, we will just kind of start to riff on. So we're going to flick away from the footage here, and let's get our word. Go ahead and read that for everyone, please, Sam.
The word is lunch.
Crap.
So my immediate thought here is that I kind of... I'm hungry. No, I'm just kidding. My immediate thought is, I guess, like, I'm thinking of that game in the original Pokemon Stadium where everybody plays as Lickitung, and they, like, go around the restaurant.
That's what I was thinking of.
Really? Well, that's because we played that a lot together, so.
There is a testament to just the fact that Sam and I have known each other for
like
far
a long
too long.
Time.
And pretty much just live inside each other's minds. So, yeah. Gosh, well, I guess we're right on the money there. So, Let's roll with that. So Lickitung, do you remember what that was even
I
called?
think it was called like Sushi Go Round or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I might be totally wrong, but
I believe you. So we could talk about how that kind of exists as a like mini game add-on to Pokemon Stadium, or we could look for another alternative. I have not played Cooking Mama. That would be my other thing that comes to mind.
I mean,
there's not a lot of cooking games.
I'm thinking of
the other.
There's like Diner Dash. I don't know. I haven't played that either, but
I've played that on like my flip phone way back in the day.
Okay.
But let's talk about an alternate world where Pokemon Stadium games don't have mini games. What does that mean? What do you think that would mean for their success?
I don't think that people bought those games for the mini games, even though like maybe the mini games were like the most fun part. Like I don't know. I don't think that would affect the success that much.
Sure. I think like, I find myself coming back for.
I kind of like the mini games like at this point in time, because like when the Pokemon Stadium first came out, it's basically like a supplementary game to like all your Game Boy Pokemon games. It's like, well, everybody likes these games because like these are the best Pokemon games, but like if you get this game, then you can like see all your guys battle in 3D, right? Like that's it. Like that's why Pokemon Stadium like kicked ass when it came out. And then like the mini games are just extra. But now like I mean I'm not playing Pokemon Red on my like Game Boy anymore. So I kind of like the mini games.
And you know,
they're really good. Like they're really good, just extras.
Yeah, they're.
Like, this is hilarious.
They're definitely kind of feel like they're coming from the Mario Party vein a little bit, and kind of the fact that they have support up to 4 players and everything. The tournament mode is great, where you can just kind of duke it out, and first one to X amount of wins is the champion. I think it helps the game's lifespan for me. I know we kind of picked up Pokemon Stadium at one point back in either middle school or high school, and
we played it a lot. We probably played a lot of hours of Pokemon Stadium because of the mini games. Like
right, and we figured out I felt like we kind of metagamed the Stadium game too far, like the actual Pokemon battling. Like
totally,
you kind of found out that like Charizard was actually worse than Charmander just because of the moves he knew or whatever.
Right, and like I mean I think, and again like when it came out, I feel like it wasn't even so much about like the rental Pokemon. It was more about like putting your Pokemon into the like Game Boy expansion thing they made, and like seeing your Pokemon in 3D.
Now, was that something I actually didn't have an N64 growing up? Was that something you did frequently, like when you first had the game? Like, did you find yourself sending them over and things like that?
Yeah.
Because most of my experience is rental with that game, which I don't think is necessarily terrible, but I think that like when people want to like play me nowadays and like they're going back for the nostalgia, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, I know like who to rent. I know like, the 6 guys who are gonna tear you apart.
We've played the game a lot too, just using rental Pokemon, and then it's true. Like the way they set that up, like to try and balance it, they just like they're like, oh, if you rent Charmander, he has like Flamethrower, which is like the best fire move. But if you rent Charizard, he has like Ember. So his stats are still like way better than Charmander, but he has like the worst move.
Like light a match and like try and burn the other guy before it goes out.
Because I guess they want to make renting Pokemon like a viable strategy, or make it at least fair if we're playing in that context of like everybody's renting Pokemon. But no, I mean like when this game came out, I was definitely putting my like cartridge, my like Game Boy cartridge in there like every time, whether it was to like put my Pokemon to the test in this like 3D tournament setting or whatever. And then maybe even more than that, this other third thing, which was like not the Pokemon Stadium and not the like side mini games, but the like giant Game Boy tower where you can just play the Game Boy game on like an emulator basically, on like your TV and just like speed it up so it goes 3 times as fast. Maybe that's what Pokemon Stadium was all about, you know, just the thing that lets you play way faster and just like I think grind, you know.
I think just it was a home run from Nintendo. I think it was a game, you know, a lot of people wanted to see Pokemon in 3D, and coming out the gates on it, they were super strong, and they made sure it was loaded with content for pretty much anyone and everyone.
Yeah, it was.
To keep you playing. So I think that's, you know, a huge kudos in their book. You know, if this were a game made by EA nowadays, you would have to buy like 90 passes to get like all the content, and it would come out to like $190. But, you know, back then you just got a plastic little cartridge with, you know...
Well, just like a lot of content on there.
And still, like, being played to this day. You know, I'm still blowing all the dust out of the chip there. So, yeah, super cool. Very mildly related to lunch, but that is kind of the nature of this segment, is it can
Pokemon
be just
Stadium.
First thing that comes to mind.
Lunch, dude.
Lunch, exactly. You know, a game you might play before and or after eating lunch. That's pretty much a fact, actually.
Yeah.
It's some lunch at some point, you know.
Yeah.
So that's going to be it for us today. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Again, we are now available. We are published on iTunes and Google Play as well. So if you hit up their podcast section, you can find us there. We are on YouTube as well. The Splatt Show is our username. And twitch.tv/Purple Platypus is our stream right now. I feel like it'll probably be in our best interest to make our own channel for that. So we'll probably do that in the next couple weeks. As always, we super love the feedback. If you are watching this on YouTube, let us know what you thought of the format. You know, this is our first time. I was learning to do the switches as well and everything. But a lot of fun. You know, the video content I think is a cool addition, and we will look forward to speaking with you in a couple weeks.
Shout outs to lunch. Everybody, don't forget to eat lunch today.
Yeah.
Keep it healthy.
I mean, everyone's probably eating lunch, but tomorrow, like, write it down.
Yeah,
write it down.
Yeah, don't forget.
All right. Stay healthy.